this computer. Let's try that, see how it goes. Okay, so let's get started. Hello, everybody. This is James Orr. Tina, yes, I can see that you're typing on there. And tonight is Get Your First Deal Done. This is going to be the first webinar class we've done for the Nomad stuff. We've been launching new Nomad investor clubs in a couple different cities. I think we've got 6 or so formed. And so instead of doing the classes just locally here in Fort Collins, we are going to try to do webinars so that the other people in the other markets can take the classes. And then they will be getting together in other cities together on Thursday evenings at around 6 o'clock, their local time. And the people here in Northern Colorado, of course, we get together on Wednesday nights at 6 o'clock. So tomorrow night's class will be an opportunity to come and ask questions if you want. Although you guys are welcome to ask questions live right here on the webinar too. This is live. It is about 6:01 Mountain Standard Time. So let me know if you've got questions, and I should be able to see them. And I don't mind being distracted if you guys ask your questions. Ask questions, by the way, when we're doing that. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, can everyone see my screen? It should say Nomad, Get Your First Deal Done. That kind of logo screen. If there's someone who can't see it, definitely let me know. It looks like we've got 12 people on so far, and I expect to see some people kind of come in. I've just kind of did the slide, but if you guys can't see my screen or can't hear me, let me know, or someone let me know that they can hear me. That way, make sure that we're good to go. But I think it's working fine. So let's do introductions. Basically, there's a chat box for you to be able to type stuff in. Who are you and what city and state are you from? And then what is your why for doing real estate? So tonight's class is about getting your first deal done. And one of the things we're going to talk about is coming up with your why, why it's important for you to get involved in real estate. And so if you could just let me know in your text box there, who you are and what city and state you're from. I'll go ahead and read a few off if you guys are willing to participate in that too. So feel free to type in the text box there. I should be able to see them, although I can't quite see anybody answering yet. So maybe everyone's typing. Did I miss it? Oh, wait. Oh, maybe not. Oh, everyone's typing in the chat box. Okay. So new here, just want to say hi, Cameron, Mark from Pueblo, Aaron from Milliken. Welcome, everybody. Donna from Fort Collins. Why is family? Financial freedom is what Aaron wants. Financial freedom is what Mark wants too. I guess I was missing that. Cole and Teddy from Fort Collins. Becky from Fort Collins. Alicia from Longmont, getting to real estate for financial freedom. Elijah from Fort Collins, build generational wealth, and Cameron from Greeley. So yeah, I appreciate you all doing that. Apparently I was looking in the wrong thing. There's a Q&A section, and then there's also a chat. And so I guess I could read both of those. If you have Q&A, I'm not sure which one we'll use. I'm still figuring out the webinar software ourselves. This is our first one. So thanks for everyone participating. Oh, Tina says Alamosa wanted to bring more money and change the way I do that. So it's awesome. Thank you, everybody, for participating. And Gretchen says, I think for retirement, why is financial freedom from Becky. So Lynn's from Colorado, retirement, my wife and I. Yep, absolutely, Lynn. Thanks, welcome. Sandy, and I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I apologize. Is it Yaka? Looking to get into rentals in Fort Collins. So thanks, welcome, everybody. So yeah, this is totally live, and you're welcome to ask questions throughout. I will try to notice. I'm not sure if you should use Q&A or chat. I'm not sure if I'll turn chat off in the future ones, but I'm going to kind of just move forward here and we'll kind of catch up. So very relaxed atmosphere for me. For anyone to see me kind of present in person, you kind of know that's how I run the classes. So I want to talk to you a little bit about upcoming classes. So next Tuesday, we're going to go over Financing Nomad 101. It's going to be a great class covering all the details of how to set up financing and talk about coming up with a financial plan for getting the mortgages for doing Nomad. And that's going to be next Tuesday, January 17th. 6 p.m. to about 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So next one's going to be buying process overview for nomads. A little bit different than tonight's class. Tonight's class is about getting your first deal done. The buying process overview for nomads is still going to be a pretty high-level thing, but we're going to go over all the different steps involved for buying, and so we'll be covering that. And then finding properties for nomads, that's going to be on January 31st. That's going to go over what the selection process looks like for selecting properties and how do you find them and what criteria is important and things like that. And that's going to be on January 31st. then a class we've never really done before, but it's going to be Nomad 101, frequently asked questions and answers. And I'll basically put together a whole bunch of frequently asked questions I get all the time about what Nomad is and how it works and things of that nature. And then people will be able to ask any additional questions they might have about Nomad. So you're welcome to come on there and ask questions. The full schedule for the year, I already planned out the year's worth of classes. I think there's about 50 of them or so. And you can go to learntoberiich.com and /schedule. It's also a link on the left-hand side where you can go see the schedule and see what the list of upcoming classes are. Throughout the presentation tonight, we're going to have like single bullet points that I end up teaching like a 2-hour class on, and I'll reference those and I'll tell you the date that we're going to have them, so you'll be able to see all those as well. All right, so what is Nomad? Normally when I teach this class live, I ask someone in the room, kind of what is Nomad at this point so that they can explain it back to me. But Nomad, in the most simplest form, is you buy a home as an owner-occupant. You do that so that we can take advantage of the low and nothing down loan programs that you can buy properties with. So, we're able to go buy a property with 1% down or nothing down if you're doing VA or USDA, or 3.5% down if you're doing FHA. And in most cases for the properties 3 and on, we're doing 5% down as a down payment. We're going to live there for a year. We're going to live in that property as an owner occupant for the first year. And then after the first year, we're going to convert that property to a rental. And we're going to keep that property as a rental, acquiring as many rental properties as you want by repeating this cycle until you reach your financial goals. And we usually model it out to about 10 properties. With the new book, the lease option exit book, I think we go a lot more beyond 10. But the plain vanilla version of Nomad is we're acquiring 10 properties like this over 10 years, and then we're just paying them off. We're holding on to them until they're completely free and clear, and they're generating passive income, and we can use that for retirement money or kind of generational wealth, kind of doing that. So that's the basic idea what Nomad is. Does anyone have any questions on that? Feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to keep moving and cover a lot of stuff because the class is this is based on Brian's class that he taught. I think he's taught this twice before, but it's based on the presentation, Get Your First Deal Done. And a lot of it's from Brian's presentation. I've kind of borrowed it with his permission, of course, and I put his name on there and everything. But we added a few things that are very specific to Nomad to kind of improve on that. So as I said before, ask questions as we go, and I'm happy to pause and answer those questions. And I've got my favorite beverage. You guys are welcome to have your favorite beverage as we do the class tonight. So, all right, so what's your goal? So is your goal financial freedom? However you choose to define that. And we had several people say, my goal was financial freedom when we were talking about that, when we asked kind of what your kind of thinking was and goal was for this evening. And we did a presentation, I guess for the local people, it was supposed to be last week's presentation that we canceled for snow. But in that presentation, Robert Kiyosaki talks about his definition of what financial freedom is, the kind of wealth was. And his definition of that is the number, it's a very different definition. It's not a dollar amount. It's the number of months that you can afford not to work and have enough money to support your lifestyle. So if you've got $1 million and you're spending $10,000 a month, then however many months you can last spending $10,000 a month without working is the definition of financial freedom, your kind of wealth number there. And so it's a pretty interesting exercise. If you want to go watch that particular class, you're welcome to go to this website right here. I think for the local people, I emailed out a link because we got canceled with snow to this presentation, but you're welcome to go watch that for those that didn't see it. So let's see here. So wealth for you, your kids, your grandkids. I think we had a couple people on here that were talking about wanting to build generational wealth. And one of the things we talk about with Nomad, especially the legacy Nomad model, is being able to do the Nomad model for your kids. So that's one of the things we're doing with our kids. Our kids, I've got 2 kids. One's a junior in college. The other one is going to be a freshman in college. And we've offered to gift them down payment money to get some money out of our estate and money they could use in order to start acquiring rental properties using the Nomad model. So they'd try to move into a property. We'd gift them whatever they needed for the first down payment, whether that's 1%, 3%, or 5% for their particular property. And then they would move in and be able to acquire rental properties in that. And so part of what we're doing is we're generating wealth with Nomad for our kids and eventually grandkids. I'll do it for the grandkids as well. So that could be a model for you. And that's the legacy Nomad class that we teach on how to do that. More time with families and friends, and how do you quantify this? Brian likes to talk about when he teaches this class, whether that's quality time or a quantity of time. Are you trying to spend, every waking hour with your kids and your family? I'm not sure that's realistic for a lot of people. I'm not sure they want to spend time with you on that level. I think they need some space and stuff too. But, basically, are you spending, good quality vacations, 3 times a year or 4 times a year? Or are you spending family dinner every night? Whatever that is, and that's important for you. What's your goal with doing the Nomad model in real estate and trying to acquire properties? So lots of travel. Many of you know I'm not a big travel guy. I was bamboozled into multiple trips last year. I think we went to Mexico twice, and I did another trip with my son. We spent some quality time together there, but that is not my thing. I definitely prefer to be at home, kind of in my house doing that stuff. But travel is listed always really high in the list of aspirations for people when they want to retire. So, a lot of people are interested in travel. Is that something that you're interested in? Do you want a ski home? Do you want a beach home? Do you want a few nice cars? What's important to you? What's your goal for doing this? Do you have any charitable causes you'd like to support? Do you want to pay off your mortgage with passive income or pay all your bills too? There's a great exercise when we're talking about, acquiring rental properties just in general, not Nomad in specific, but the idea that, if you have one bill, let's say you have a cell phone bill and the cell phone bill is $100 a month or whatever your cell phone bill is for you. I think mine's like almost $300 a month. But, basically whatever your cell phone bill is, can you go and acquire passive income from your rental properties that pays that one bill? And then once you have that, using it to say, okay, now can I go ahead and have my passive income pay for my television bill or my car loan if you've got a car loan, or eventually your mortgage payments, and eventually your food expenses, and kind of build on that slowly over time, and have each little asset start to pay for things with passive income. And I think it's an important idea to set a goal for that too. And then how much do you want to have? Is it $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 a month? Whatever your goal is, kind of have that idea in mind and be able to work toward it. Do you want to have a certain dollar amount in your bank account? If Brian has on here $5 million as a number, I think a lot of people would be happier with a lot less than $5 million. But it's really up to you. And the plain vanilla Nomad model, and I'll show you a chart on this in a minute, actually has you have $8 million in real estate net worth, just the kind of raw equity of the model, just acquiring 10 properties. And I'll walk you through some of the math on that tonight. So then what is your plan to get there? That's the kind of next step here. We want to begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey likes to talk about, from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a great book. If you guys have not read that, I would highly recommend that you go and read that if you haven't done it yet. But your plan is sort of a guideline. It is not a set of very rigid rules. It's sort of, here's what I'd like to do. Maybe it's the Nomad model, and I'm going to talk to you very specifically about what that looks like. But, is it okay to do a fix and flip in there? Sure. And I realize that a lot of people, they're going to get excited about doing stuff. They're going to be on the Nomad path, and maybe they're going to want to buy an additional rental property with 20% down, or maybe they're going to want to do a fix and flip, or a lease option deal to kind of come up with additional down payment. And I think that's a great model. So it's a guide. It's not a set of very rigid rules. It's super flexible. You can adapt the plan over time, but use the plan in order to stay focused. And at the same time, don't be afraid to change if you need to. So, if you're doing a plan and, your plan was, okay, I'm going to acquire 2 properties a year, and something changes in your marketplace where you're like, I don't know if I can acquire 2 properties a year anymore. Really, I'm going to do the Nomad model, and I'm going to acquire a rental property if it makes sense this year or next year. And so don't be afraid to kind of change that. But there's a really big warning here. And the warning is, avoid that idea of the shiny object syndrome, where you get distracted by the next cool thing. I've been teaching these classes since 2003 here in Fort Collins. And throughout the years, I've seen it all. I've seen, people come and watch Carlton Sheets late at night, and they get all excited, and they decide to come to an investor class, and they show up and they're like, okay, rental properties, nothing down rental properties, nothing down rental properties. And they're all excited about that. And then, 2 weeks later or a month later, they come to the class and they're like, I just learned about probate, and now I'm really excited about probate, and I really want to focus on probate. And that's all they're excited about. And then 2 weeks after that, they're like, wholesaling, that's the cool thing now. I want to do wholesaling. But, they end up going really shallow and not doing anything and staying focused and going deep on a plan. And if you just stick to one plan, it doesn't even need to be the best plan. You could take a relatively poor plan, but if you implement and you stick with it and you kind of stay focused and work towards something, it actually makes a huge difference. So be super careful about this shiny object syndrome, the idea that, what's new to learn. There's a lot of studies out there about kind of becoming a dabbler, someone who kind of goes in and spends hours just learning about something, but never really implementing, never going deep and taking in all the detail and figuring out things and working the plan and making it happen. So I will tell you, I've evaluated a ton of plans. I mean, obviously, I've been doing this. My parents have been investing in real estate since the 1970s. I kind of grew up with real estate investing at the kitchen table and talking about things. My parents had rental properties, and so I've been around this for a very long time. And we started teaching classes in 2003. So what is that, like almost 14 years ago now. So I've had a chance to study a lot of different plans, and I will tell you, the Nomad model is one of the best plans you could do. I'll just tell you straight up, you're welcome to go evaluate a bunch of other ones. And when you eventually find the plan that you want to follow, you're welcome to go do that. But if you're looking for a plan that is really solid, it's easy to do. You don't have to get crazy and flip 10 properties a year and have another job kind of investing in real estate. If you want to do this as kind of a way to build wealth, and maybe you want to do this, the Nomad model, and something else, that's fine too. But just stick with one plan. Decide I'm going to do Nomad. I'm going to kind of build up my portfolio, and I'm going to buy one rental property a year, and I'm going to acquire them, and I'm going to hold on to 10 rental properties, and I'm going to pay those off, and they're going to be more than enough to develop my passive income and kind of use that as a model to move forward. I think that's a really good model. So watch out for that shiny object syndrome. Don't get enticed by someone coming along and selling a course on, okay, now I got this course on how to buy properties, with subject to or lease options or how to fix and flip deals or how to hire VAs and invest virtually around the country. There's all sorts of things you can do and be distracted by. But if you just work one plan, it doesn't have to be Nomad. I hope it's Nomad. I think Nomad's the best one out there, but you can work whatever you want. If you decide, hey, I'm only doing this one model, great. Just stick with it. Don't get distracted and learn 6 different business models over the next year. Don't have 2017 be the year where you get distracted and end up being focused, diffused, not focused on a bunch of different things. So then map out what following your plan would look like financially. And I'm going to show you that. One of the great things about Nomad is I did all the work for you. I did all the math. I showed you exactly what it looks like. And I built a calculator where you can basically plug in what your numbers are if they're not like the numbers in Northern Colorado, which is what I primarily use as examples. But you're welcome to go change whatever numbers you want and do that. So map out what following your plan will look like financially in 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now. And I've done that for you. I'm going to show you a little bit about that tonight. Document your current financial state and update as you see progress. I'm in the process of writing some additional software that will allow you to go and put in what properties you do own and when you bought them and what the interest rate was and what the appreciation rate was and what the rents are on that. And then it will track your particular portfolio. In fact, if anyone here online was actually at Brian's class where he taught the bookkeeping system he uses, he kind of walked you through his spreadsheet for keeping track of his property expenses and income and things like that. I am going to build a web-based version of that actually integrates directly in with your portfolio. So if you thought that was cool, it's going to get a lot cooler, and it's going to be available just right on the website for nomads to use to track their stuff. And so I've already told Brian, he already knows. And so you don't necessarily have to use his spreadsheet once I build this thing. But for now, if you have access to that class, if you're here, then you're welcome to go use that. So a passion for your plan is required. And I agree with Brian when he talks about this. Without it, you won't want to get up early or stay up late or take massive action to succeed. Sometimes people look at guys like Brian or me or other people that are investing in real estate, and you think, oh, they have it so easy, or they're not working hard or whatever it is. I will tell you that is not true. We are definitely hustling. We're definitely getting up early and staying up late to make things happen and going hard and reacting quickly when we see deals. There may be a point in time when you don't need to hustle and you can kind of do that, but it is not now. It's not now for me. I know it's not now for Brian. I know it's deceptive because it looks like you're not hustling, but you really do need to hustle. Less so with Nomad because you hustle in kind of spurts. You need to go buy a property and then you don't need to buy anything for another year. But you still need to hustle when you're out there buying, and when you're kind of managing your properties and maintaining those, you need to hustle then too. So you definitely need passion for your plan. You need to work it, and you need to take massive action in order to succeed. Set achievable goals to help you reach your ultimate plan goal. That's what Nomad's about. We're basically buying one property a year and converting it to a rental. So the achievable goal is, let's go ahead and make a goal to come to the classes. The classes are free. You're welcome to come to all the classes and learn. And, I think you should buy a house, whether you're going to be your Nomad property or not, but buy a property, then come to the classes for the year. At the end of the year, you can decide if you want to continue with the Nomad model or not. It's up to you. So let's take a look at what a typical Nomad plan looks like. This is the plain vanilla Nomad model. And there's lots of variations of Nomad. There's kind of a catch-up Nomad model, of a fixer-upper Nomad model now, a lease option exit Nomad model. So there's lots of different variations, but this one is kind of like the basic, is the most simplest, plain, straightforward model we have out there. And so I'm going to kind of walk you through what that looks like. It is buy one house, move in, live there for a year, then convert the property to a rental. In the most simplest terms, that's what we're doing. It's usually done with a very small down payment. In the case where I'm going to show you the numbers here in a moment, it's going to be 5% down. So we've assumed that you're going to go buy a property, and I think the price of the property that we use in this particular example is the same one we use when we talk about the catch-up Nomad class. I think I'll show you that here in a second. But we're basically going to say it's a $286,000 property. It's the property that I used in the lease option exit book, and you're putting 5% down. You're going to live there for a year. At the end of the year, you're going to buy another property, put 5% down on that one, and you're going to repeat the process until you have 10 rental properties, and you're going to keep those until they're paid off completely free and clear. Now, you don't need 5% to do this. You can do it with nothing down. If you have a VA benefit, if you're actually a veteran, thank you for your service. I was actually in the Navy as well, but if you're a VA, you can get a nothing down loan and move into the property, live there, and now you're able to do the model with nothing down on the first property. And the lease option book tells you how to do it where you don't have any down payments for the future properties too. So you could do this literally with nothing down. It's harder to do. It's more work, but you definitely can do it. You could do it with 1% down. There's a 1% down conventional loan program for your first purchase, and you can use a 1% down program for that. And then there's 3% down. You could use the 3% down for your first purchase to your second purchase. And then after that, we're using 5% down. But you could use that lease option exit in order to overcome the down payments on the subsequent properties. More work, more effort, more timing, a little bit more challenging to pull off, but you definitely can do it. For the rest of you, 5% is easy, and you can make it work. So there's the entire class we're doing on that Financing Nomad 101. That's on January 17th. I think that's next week, right? Today's the 10th. So next week on the 17th is when they're there, and you can go, if you have access to the premium Nomad stuff, you can go watch the recorded video. Otherwise, just come on the class for free next week at 6 o'clock, and you can kind of see that class there. As an aside, clients that are working with me, buying or selling a house here in Fort Collins, Loveland area, if you email me, you actually do get the premium Nomad content for free. Just let me know. All right, and then you repeat this process, like I said, until you have 10 rental properties. The results I'm about to show you, it's like a few slides from the 2-hour presentation or so that I did on Catch Up Nomad. And that class, the Catch Up Nomad class, is going to be held on April 25th. I've taught it before, and so we have a recording of it from the last time I taught it. You can go watch that there. You can also use the Nomad calculator if you're a premium member to go ahead and change the numbers for the assumption. So you can say, I'm in a market that has, $400,000 properties, or I'm in a market that has $100,000 properties. How does this change everything that we're doing? And you can go ahead and run the numbers, and it will recreate all the charts for you automatically. And then also, you could read the new Nomad Lease Option Exit book. It's the book that I gave away as my Christmas gift this year to the clients that came to the Christmas party. And it walks you through basically acquiring a multi-million-dollar portfolio of rental properties starting with nothing. You could do it with 1% down, or you could do it with nothing down. In the book, I use 1%. So you need $3,000 in order to do it, but you can acquire extreme passive income and a big portfolio of rental properties and a big chunk of cash as well in that thing. And I have it. I just wrote the book for Windsor, and then I wrote the software in order to write the book for about 200 other cities, 270 other cities or something like that. Actually, I'm sorry, 700 cities. I apologize. Take that back. 700 cities. And so basically all the numbers for the different cities are done, and the book just changes them all and shows you exactly what the plan is for that city. So you can go ahead and look at that too. It's at learntoberich.com/book. All right, so this is the chart of the equity from doing the model I just explained to you. We're basically buying 10 properties, 1 property a year for the first 10 years. After 10 years, all we're doing is continuing to keep those properties as rentals. We're not buying any more properties, and we're just letting them pay off with their normal 30-year loans. So at the end of year 40, the last property, the property you bought in year 10, is paid off free and clear. And at the end, you have a portfolio worth about $8,793,877. So just under $9 million worth of real estate that you own free and clear. It doesn't have any mortgages on it. And so basically that is what your equity buildup just by working the Nomad model doing that is. So if you guys have any questions on this, go ahead and let me know. But otherwise, I'm just going to keep moving forward. So the cash flow portion of the Nomad investor model is shown right here. And you can see early on, there's actually a little bit of negative cash flow. I mean, year one, there's negative $948 of negative cash flow. In year two, negative $1,456. And year five, it looks like there's just over $1,000 negative cash flow. But by year seven, it looks like you have positive cash flow, and the positive cash flow continues to increase over time, such that in year 30, it looks like you have about $166,000 and change a year in positive cash flow. And this is after all expenses, by the way. This is after maintenance and taxes and insurance and your mortgage payments. This is like true net. And then in year 40, it looks like the last number is year 39, 443. So it's just shy of $500,000 a year in passive cash flow. So you have almost $9 million in equity, and you have almost $500,000 per year in passive cash and passive cash flow that you can use on this plan of just buying 10 properties with Nomad over the next 10 years and just holding on to them and paying them off. And that whole catch-up Nomad class, I walk you through all the details of this. So if you kind of want to get that, you're welcome to go watch that video. Anyone have any questions on that? If so, go ahead and please let me know in Q&A or chat or whatever we're using here. And I'll look over there and kind of do that. Okay. In the meantime, while you guys are coming up with any questions you have, equity and cash flow from Nomad. So this summarizes how much total cash flow, not just cash flow per year, that you've accumulated with your Nomad properties, and how much total equity. The equity number is the same. It's the same number that we had on the slide 2 slides ago. It's like almost $9 million. And the cash flow, I see your question, Don. I'll get to you in 1 second. And then the total amount of cash flow you've accumulated over the 40-year period looks like it is just about $5 million total. So you had $5 million total in aggregate cash flow over that 40-year period, and about 8.8, almost $9 million, and being able to do that in equity. So quite a big portfolio just for buying 10 rental properties over that first 10 years. So Donna actually asked the question, can a full-time job and Nomad work? And the answer is yes. In fact, I think it's harder to do this without a full-time job, because one of the requirements for the Nomad is being able to qualify for the loans. And so you do need income in order to qualify for that. And we talk about that a little bit during the Catch-Up Nomad, exactly how much income you would need. I have a chart showing you income required per year to do that. And yeah, so you definitely can do it, because the only thing you're doing, let's imagine for a second, let's kind of put ourselves in this, we're kind of going through getting our first deal done. So I want you to imagine for a second what year one looks like. Year one looks like you acquiring a single property that you're going to live in. It's not even you're getting a rental property. You're buying a property to move into and stay there. We're just selecting a property that you're going to move into that you know is going to be a good rental after you live there for a year. We're going to convert it to a rental and then buy the next one. And so, yeah, you're basically buying a property to live in. You live there for a year. You come to the classes. You can watch the live version just like you are now on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And then if you miss it, you can watch the recording. I'm going to put the recordings up Wednesday and Thursday. And then Thursday, after the local people in their market kind of have their meeting, I'm going to pull the video down, put it into the premium content thing for subscribers to that, so they can all watch the previous recording videos. But as long as you're willing to watch a video either Tuesday night live and ask questions, or Wednesday or Thursday, you'll get all the training you need over that course of that first year. And it's all free. And so you basically do that. You buy one property. Then you decide after you come to the classes for a year or so, and I think this is on a slide coming up, but you say, hey, listen, I'm going to come to classes for a year, listen to what James has to say, listen to what the other local investors have to say, and see what they like doing. And if they don't, if I don't like it after the year, no worries. I mean, now you've just bought a house to live in, which I think you're better off doing anyway, especially in our market. So you bought a house to live in, you're living there. You can decide, I don't think I want to own a house at all, so you can sell it. You could decide that I want to keep this one as a rental, and I'm going to go buy a house that I really want to just live in full time. And you can convert that one to your rental. Now you have a rental property. So I think it's a very forgiving model. So yeah, I think you totally can do this with a full-time job. I don't think it's a lot of extra work at all. And we're going to teach you property management. It's one of the things that's included in the training we're doing too. So I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, definitely let me know, but we'll keep moving on. If anything else comes up, please let me know. Oh, you're very welcome, Donna. Okay, so plan recommendation. Buy your first home to move in with Nomad in mind. So, I mean, this is the plan that I'm recommending to you if you want to do Nomad. You go look at properties, you decide, I want to buy a property and I'm going to live there for a year, but I want to make sure that it's going to be a good rental property. And we're going to talk about that in finding properties for nomads, that whole class we do, like 2-hour class just on that alone. Then continue to come to our free classes in the local meetup group, learn all the details, get all your questions answered, meet others on the Nomad path, discuss things, discuss what's working in your market, what's not working, where the challenges are. We have unique challenges here in Northern Colorado, but we're solving them all. And in other markets, I'm sure that there's going to be some challenges. Bring them to me on the live webinars, and we'll answer those questions. If I don't know the answer, we'll have to rely on some people locally in your market to figure out what's different in yours and kind of solve it. But that's the idea. And then after you've been coming to class, you decide if you want to continue on the Nomad path during the first year. Each year you get to decide if you're going to stop or continue. It's not like you do one thing and you have to do 10, otherwise it's going to ruin everything. That's not how it works at all. You can decide, hey, I'm going to do 1. If you decide to stop after 1, then you got 1 rental property and you move into another house and you kind of do that. You decide you want to stop after 5, you got 5 rental properties. Maybe your numbers are not going to be nearly as good, but maybe that's good enough for you and that's what you need. Maybe you only need I don't know, $5,000 a month or $2,000 a month. I don't know what your numbers are, but we can go model that for you. Okay. So Nomad is super accommodating of that approach. So what is your why for real estate? We talked about this a little bit when we got on there, figuring out what your why is, the underlying aspect of the why you choose to do real estate, what motivates you to keep going, keep coming to class, keep showing up for meetups and learning, especially when the going gets tough. So when you're thinking about this, realize there are going to be nights on Tuesday when you're not going to want to come to the webinar. You're going to be tired. You're going to have a bad day at work. Things are going to have happened. But, I personally think most people, after they come and they leave these webinars, at least when they come and they leave the classes locally at NCRAG, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, definitely chime in here. But I think most people that leave NCRAG, they are energized, they're motivated, they're excited about doing stuff and taking action, even if when they first got there, they were feeling kind of lousy. They could have come and said, I just got to get there. And when they get there, they see people taking action. They see people getting excited and they're motivated. They want to do it. So I think you got to start thinking about that now. What is motivating you? Why do you want to do this real estate stuff? So that you're motivated to come to those classes and keep coming to classes and keep showing up for the meetups and keep learning, keep networking with others, especially when you don't feel like it. You've been doing this for 3 months. You're like, that kind of thing is pretty interesting. But what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to do day trading. Day trading seems like an interesting thing. I'll go learn about that now. I don't think you're going to get anywhere by doing that. I think you really want to focus on one thing. So many people answer, money or wealth, or I want to quit my job. And Brian points out, and I think he's right about this, I don't think that's enough for about 99.9% of the people. I think you need more than just quit your job or money or wealth. You need to do it for a bigger reason. At some point, the gas to take action will run out if the goal is just money. And the path of least resistance, if you want to keep your current job, is, I'm just going to keep working because that's enough. Teddy says, after each class, we're super motivated and excited. So, yeah, I think that's true. I think a lot of people come to those classes to get excited. So thanks for sharing that. So I think you need to go deeper. What will you do with the money and why? What's your motivating factor when you're doing that? Better life with your family, help the homeless, end puppy mills. What is super exciting to you to do that? And that why is the reason that gives you chills when you think about it. It's what gets you excited, gets you up early in the morning. You're like, oh, this is great. I get to go work on that today. So find the thing that really matters and that will drive you to succeed. Okay, so we're now covered the why of you want to do this. Now let's start talking about building your team. In my opinion, the primary team member you're probably going to need is a real estate agent. They're going to help you kind of fill in the gap of the other parts of your team. They're going to ones that are going to know the mortgage brokers. They're going to know the title companies. They're going to know a lot of insurance agents. They're going to know, the inspectors, and they're going to know, all the different guys that you need. In my opinion, you want to start with a really strong real estate agent. And you're welcome to go. Oh, looks. Ty says you nailed it. Sometimes hard to get there, but I never regret it. Yeah. So I appreciate all that. So getting back to this, so build your team. Focus on the real estate agent you need in order to do that. And people in other market, I think you need to go to the meetups and start meeting other real estate agents that are learning about the Nomad model, and so that they can support you, they can understand it, and they can work with you, and they can overcome the challenges. And they're committed to helping you and being there to support you when you have questions, and doing it in a very non-pressury sort of way. I think that's a good way to operate. So I probably should do a whole class on some of the characteristics for selecting a real estate agent. I had we had a situation recently with our family in another state. Tammy's parents are possibly considering selling their house. Long story, but they're possibly considering selling their house. And so we were starting to talk about, bringing in a real estate agent up there in order to help them sell their home and maybe buy another one. And there was a big discussion amongst family as to, how do you select a real estate agent to help mom and dad, in a totally different state, kind of do this thing. And so, I had a bunch of conversations about this recently, and I probably should do just a whole class on how to find a real estate agent to kind of work with you on the Nomad model. But I think a good first step is definitely go to the meetups and to meet people there. So I'm going to use the word real estate agent, real estate broker, and realtor interchangeably. They're actually technically not all the same, but for the sake of kind of our discussion tonight, we're going to say that they're all real estate agents, which is probably not true. And so I mean all three. There's a couple of questions that come up when we talk about real estate agents, and I'm just going to briefly address these. One of the thoughts, especially when you're doing real estate investing, that's not just Nomad where you're buying one property a year, but if you're trying to buy a whole bunch of properties, you're trying to buy fix and flip properties or deeply discounted properties or things of that nature, why don't you go and find not just one real estate agent to work with, but 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 and tell them, hey, listen, these are the type of deals I'm looking for. If you find these type of deals, come to me and I'll buy them from you. And I think, the idea is sound that, if I have 10 people looking for me, I have 10 more chances of actually finding deals. In practice, it tends to fall apart. And, there's probably exceptions to this, but, if I think about if someone came to me and said, hey, listen, I'm looking for these types of deals. If you bring me the deal, I'll go ahead and, buy it with you. The challenge is I see them then walk away from me and go talk to another real estate agent, and they tell the other agent the same thing. And I feel like, if I had a deal, I'm going to bring it to my clients that are loyal to me. And I'm probably not going to take you on as a client because you obviously have your loyalty spread elsewhere. If you kind of take the analogy and apply it to maybe spouses, if you had like 3 or 4 other people that you were all sort of, dating or being married to or something like that, it's kind of weird. So not that you're getting married to your real estate agent, but the idea is that if you're loyal to them, I think that they have a tendency to bring the deals to you. If you're telling 100 agents that, just bring me a deal, I'll do it with you, tends not to work. I think most agents are just like, yeah, I'm too busy for that. If they want to be loyal, we'll work together exclusively. If they're not, then do that. But it's up to you guys. You can do that. I don't recommend it. What's the relationship with your agent? And Brian goes over very briefly the different thing about buyer agency, where the real estate agent represents the buyer in their best interest. And then a lot of times that agent is paid by the seller. So it's a really interesting thing in that the agent actually works for you and represent you as the buyer, but is paid by the seller. And that's the way that I prefer to work. Another point Brian likes to make on this presentation is if your agent isn't willing to terminate your agreement and says, hey, listen, we're exclusively working together, but if I'm not happy as the buyer, I want to be able to cancel our agreement and kind of go out and do something on my own. If the agent isn't willing to terminate any time, if you're not happy, you may want to double think about working with them, in my opinion. And I think it's Brian's opinion too. And that is my normal stance with clients too. If they're wanting to sign an agreement with me to work with me and they're not happy, I don't want to work with them if they're not happy. I'm not trying to lock them into a relationship and say, you have to buy a house with me. We've been out looking at 3 houses before, now you're committed. That's not how I work. I want them to be happy. And if they're not happy anymore, rather than them badmouth me all around town, I would much prefer that we kind of say, hey, let's part ways. Let's have you work with someone else. And I hope you're happy with them because it just wasn't a good fit for us. So I think if your agent is not willing to do that, they want to think twice. Transaction broker, that's when the broker doesn't represent the buyer or the seller. They're kind of playing as a referee and trying to help the buyer buy and the seller sell, but they're not representing either party's best interest. And so they're not negotiating on behalf of either one. And then seller agency, that's where the real estate agent represents the seller. Here in Colorado, and it may be different in other areas, the buyer then is a customer in that situation. So if I were representing the seller and you came to me and I was not representing you, you would then become a customer to me, and I would be just doing my part in order to help the seller sell and representing them. And you'd be like, someone just came into a store and was trying to check out. And so I would be treating you fairly and honestly, but at the same time, the best interest of the seller is who I would be taking into account. So when you kind of select a real estate agent, a couple little things to consider there. And I think I've done some classes where we went into this in a lot more detail. I think it's coming up here in the buying process. I think that's where it is. All right, so continue to build your team. Supportive family and friends. And Brian makes a big deal on this, and I think he's absolutely right on. If you don't have supportive family or friends that are kind of encouraging you to do this, if they're always naysaying and nagging and, why are you going to that class? And, those guys they're going to scam you, and, they're going to take your money, and, they don't care about you. They're really just, you look like a commission to them. And, why buy this real estate? Property values went down. Don't you remember what happened in 2008? And, the Great Depression, more people lost money, investing in real estate than anything else. I don't think that's true, by the way. But, they're always just negative and naysaying, and they're not supportive of you, going after your dreams and stuff like that. So if you don't have a supportive family or friends, you may want to pick some different friends. Hard to pick a different family, but I'd strongly encourage you to get away from that because they're not really helping you. They're not serving you. And so, be a little bit more selective in that and choose to hang out with some more people. Maybe make some friends that meet up and kind of start hanging out more with those people. So Brian says it's more important than you think, and I would agree. Mentors, should be successful at what you plan to do. My opinion on mentors is, try to find a mentor that can help you grow from where you are. And a lot of times in life, that means that you end up trading up mentors. I mean, you get to the point where, your mentor has helped you and you've kind of grown a good amount with them. And then sometimes you need to trade to a different person, someone who is at a spot where you want to grow to, and they can help you get to that next step. So definitely take that into account. Ideally, someone who's investing in understands your market well. I don't understand all markets. I feel pretty comfortable with the Northern Colorado market, but I don't know a lot of markets around the country. And so I could definitely help you with the Nomad model. I understand that really, really well, especially the mathematics behind it, because I model this thing like crazy. But, as far as like being able to tell you what part of town or what your normal cash on cash return is in your market or things like that, I have no idea. Unless you're in Northern Colorado, and I can tell you all that there, but you really need to find someone locally who can help you with that. So attorneys, you're probably going to need several attorneys because most of them have specialties, but you'll probably need an attorney to help with asset protection, kind of protecting the big nest egg you're growing there with Nomad. You'll probably need an attorney for lease and or contracts or documents, and maybe a different attorney for doing some evictions and stuff like that. So be aware of that. Mortgage brokers and lenders, your real estate agent a lot of times can help you with a group of mortgage brokers that they've worked with that they know can get loans closed and things of that nature. So definitely focus in on working with a really good mortgage broker or lender, someone that's going to help you do a mortgage plan for 10 properties, because you're not just buying one property, you're buying a series of these properties over time. Insurance agent, yep, you're going to need to have insurance on your property, make sure that you're insured correctly. Home inspectors, when you go buy a property, you're going to definitely want to have it inspected, in my opinion. And so you'll need to have a home inspector that you can rely on to help you determine what's good about the property and what probably needs to be worked, what needs to be fixed and negotiated. Title agent or closer, or whatever the equivalent is in your local real estate market. There are some markets that they have an attorney actually escrow stuff, and so you probably need one of those. A lot of times your real estate agent will help you with this. And in our market, most of the time the seller selects because it's something that we're not really negotiating that hard in our market in order to get your offer accepted. A lot of times we're letting the seller have their choice so that we can get our offer accepted. It's a super competitive market here. So CPA and bookkeeper, you're going to need, especially as you acquire some more rental properties, you definitely need to have someone help out with books and CPA stuff, although Brian's software makes it pretty much easy. Handyman, plumber, electrician, HVAC, carpet cleaner, house cleaners. You have all the normal trades guys, painters, flooring, roofing, yard care, snow removal, pest control, a remodel team, all those different folks that you need in order to run your real estate business. These are all folks you need. And a lot of times your real estate agent has contacts for these. I know I do for our local market clients and stuff like that. And then over time, if you're going to do stuff beyond Nomad, you might need some private investors or potential loan partners. If you're going to do some partnering on deals or lease options or things of that nature, you can go ahead and use those too. So here's a quick recap how to start. Set your goals, build your plan, understand your why, start building your team, and start with supportive friends and family, real estate agent, mortgage broker, mentors, and then attend your local meetup to meet the local professionals that understand the Nomad model and are committed to helping you. Then get your financial house in order. Get a budget ready so that you have all that ready to go and you know what you can afford to spend and things of that nature. Save for your down payment. It's a lot easier with the Nomad model. We're not saving for 20% down or 25% down. So with the Nomad model, you can do it with nothing down, USDA and VA loans. There's also some down payment assistance programs in some markets with FHA, and it can help you with that. But primarily, 1% down conventional. There's a 3% down conventional. There's a 3.5% down FHA or a 5% down conventional. And those are typically the low down programs that we're using for Nomad. So you want to start saving for your down payment or figuring out where you're going to come up with that from. Repair your credit as needed. So, if you know that you're at a 700 credit score and that there's a little bit of a bump when you get to 720, you get a little bit better interest rates, which is going to help you with better cash flow, which is going to help you acquire more properties. So when you get all those things, work on repairing your credit. It's worthwhile to go sit down with your lender and say, hey, listen, do you know a lot about credit repair and do you understand how credit scores work? Because I'd like some advice on how I can actually bump up my score. And if they're an expert and they can help you, that's great. If they aren't, you might even want to seek out a credit repair person to help you improve your credit and fix some things. If you have some blemishes on there, talk to them about some strategies to help overcome those. Or if you want to get your ratios more in line and utilize your credit a little bit more wisely, and so you can kind of get it done there. So basically go there and work on your credit when you want to do that. Ideally, you want your middle score to be in that 720 to 740 range if possible. Repairing credit is not intuitive. So Brian mentions this too, and it's absolutely correct. If you think you're going to improve your credit by paying off all your credit cards and closing them down, you're wrong. You need to be super, super careful about what you do for your credit and how you improve it. There are kind of like general guidelines of how to improve it, and you want to talk to someone who's knowledgeable about it and your specific situation to make sure that you don't do something that's actually going to adversely lower your credit score, and it won't help you at all. So be super careful about that. So if you haven't done these things, put together a budget, start saving for your down payment, start meeting with your real estate agent, your lender, and repairing your credit, you really need to do that. And you need to do it right away, because unless all this other stuff is done, then the other steps of putting houses under contracts and doing that, it's going to be much harder, because you're going to be rushing all these things that you should have done ahead of time when you find a house that you want. The time to kind of figure out if you're qualified for a loan is not at 6 o'clock after you've gone out looking at houses for the first day and you find one that you really love. You want to have all this stuff done in advance before you're out there looking at houses. Okay, so you got your plan done. Check. Next step, find the best real estate agent. We talked about that. Ideally, someone understands Nomad and what you're trying to do. Watch these classes, TENS Meetup. Go over the purchase contract with your real estate agent before you start looking at property. So this is a big deal. If you're going to go out there and start looking at properties, I think you should understand the contract at that point. I don't think you should wait until you found a property and you're like, okay, so I like this one. What do we do next? How do I get my offer accepted? And then the real estate agent says, well, let me show you. This is the paperwork we do in order to put a property under contract. And they hand you the document at 6 o'clock at night when your attorney is not open and available to take your questions. Your accountant is not open and available to take your questions. Your lender is probably not open and available to take your questions. The time to go over this contract is well ahead of time. So I think you meet with your real estate agent. If it were me, I'd meet with you and we'd have a burrito and we sit down and we talk about, kind of what you're planning on doing. And we say, okay, great. Do you have any questions? Here's my book, which I kind of give you to go over a lot of different things. But, do you have any questions about contract? Do you want to do a mock contract where we kind of write one up and answer any questions? You can go bring it to your attorney. In my book, I've got a copy of the contract. You can go have your attorney go over it with you. But if you have questions about it, the time to ask is not at 6 o'clock after you found the property and you're all emotionally worked up and you're stressed and you're excited and you're anxious about things. You want to do this when you're calm, so that when you do find something at 6 o'clock, you've got your lender in place. Your lender has qualified you for the loan. You know that you can afford it. You know what your numbers are. You know what your concerns are. You understand how you're going to have it inspected. You understand how all the stuff works. And you've reviewed your contract and you have all your questions answered about that. Now it's a matter of just filling in the blanks for this offer. And then you only need to learn about what's different from the initial sample practice offer that we made or that the agent went over with you. Okay, so this is especially true in really hot real estate markets like we're in now, but I think it's also a good practice even in normal and soft markets, because you don't want to risk losing a property because you had to be taught a contract, and it's hard to learn a contract in 1 hour. I think you need some time to sit down, read through it, look at some questions. A lot of times we do a video class on it and kind of walk through it. So I think it's really important to do that stuff. Compare your mortgage broker and lender. Get recommendations from your real estate agent from the local meetup. Ask what their interest rates are and their terms are for your situation. For example, the down payment percentage, if you're doing a 1% down conventional, that's a special loan program and not every lender has it. So you're going to need to shop around and find one that does, or ask your real estate agent if they know one that does. Are you doing an investment property, 20% down, 25% down? Or are you doing Nomad where you're going to be able to get in there really light with 1%, 3%, 3.5%, 5% down? What credit score you need to qualify? What is the qualification you need to do this? And I would suggest personally that you talk to several different lenders, not just one. And when you talk to several different lenders, my personal way to do it is you tell them, hey, listen, my credit score is 760. That's the middle score. My scores are 742, 760, and 784. And I'm just telling you my middle credit score is 760. Can you please give me a quote as if I was going to get a loan on this property here today, $300,000 property. I want to know what all the fees are, what the rate would be, what my down payment requirement would be. And you call up 3 or 4 lenders in the same day, or however many you're calling, but you call up more than one lender in the same day, and you ask them to give you simultaneous quotes. And don't have each one pull your credit, because you don't want your credit score to be adversely affected. But you just tell them, hey, listen, my credit score is 760. Yeah, I know you're going to need to pull it and qualify me if I decide to go with you. But I'm telling you, for now, I want you to quote me as if I have a 760 credit score, and then you can compare 3 or 4 different lenders, or however many you're doing, and see what their rate was on that same day, see what their fees were on that same day, and compare them. And, if it were me, what I would do is I'd kind of quote a couple different guys, and the guy or gal that I thought I was going to go with, I would go sit down with him. I'd say, hey, listen, I think I'm going with you. I'd like to sit down with you and show you the quotes I got from the multiple mortgage brokers that I called on, because I want to make sure I understand the differences between them to make sure that I do want to go with you. Could you, grab lunch with me or have me meet at the office and we can kind of sit down and talk about this? And I think most good mortgage brokers that are relationship based, that really want your business, especially if they know you're going to be doing 10 loans over 10 years, they want to invest that time up front for the relationship and know that you're going to be using them and kind of they're part of your team. And so sitting down and going over that and say, okay, this lender has this fee, we don't charge that, or we charge this fee, but it's really just this one broken out of the one that they have on here. They charge $1,000 for it. We break it out, it's $200 plus $500, and so those are those 2 numbers, but they call it something else on theirs, and just have them all walk you through exactly what the difference is. Rely on your team to do that. And if they say something that doesn't make sense, you don't feel comfortable, well, then maybe you don't work with them, or maybe you go and you meet with another one until you feel comfortable, and maybe you talk to your real estate agent and do that. But I think the idea is to kind of get out there and compare different lenders to do it. Typically 720 gets you the best rates. Sometimes it's 740. Definitely compare them on the same day. Ask for their fees. Brian talks about the origination fee, which is usually the fee paid in order to originate the loan. A lot of that goes to the actual mortgage broker. The underwriting fee, a lot of that goes to the underwriting department when they're actually underwriting the loan. The appraiser, which goes to the appraiser that goes out and gives the lender a value on the property. It's not usually a profit center for the actual lender themselves, but asking them what their fees are so that you can do that. So origination, underwriting, there are some lenders out there, they're really uncommon, but there are some that actually have no origination fee and no underwriting fee. And sometimes they actually bake that into the rate. They give you a slightly higher rate. There's other lenders that I can't find out where it is. For some reason, they don't charge an origination fee and underwriting fee, and I don't see a higher rate when they compare 2 different lenders on the same day. And so I'm not sure exactly how they're doing it. So maybe they're not making money on the front end or something like that. I don't know. But then there's other lenders that those origination underwriting fees can be thousands of dollars. And it's usually even more than that in portfolio loans. So just kind of be aware of that. Appraisal, it's typically $400 to $700 in our market. I've seen some really high appraisals lately. We're in a crazy market where there's a shortage of appraisers, and so the appraisers are able to raise how much they're paying, how much they're being paid in order to have things rushed and get in on time and stuff like that. And so I've had a couple appraisals recently where it was more than $1,000, and one where it was almost $2,000. In fact, the two close to $2,000 that I could think of off the top of my head in the last year. So just be aware that sometimes they're much more expensive than you might imagine in order to get things done and rushed. So other fees, Brian says you don't typically need to compare these. I sort of agree with him. I think you're just double checking. I mean, most of the time these fees are relatively small, and they're very similar across multiple lenders, but you never know if there's one kind of just snuck in there. So I'd still look at them. Tax service fee, flood cert, credit check, government recording charges. They're all pretty standard type fees, but double check them and compare them side by side, lender to lender. Here's an interesting point. So, sometimes you go to 3 lenders, and one of them is way high. It's just they're not even in the running, but 2 of them are close. Maybe it's like I don't know, $500 apart or even $1,000 apart. But The really cheap one, the really inexpensive one, you just don't get a good vibe from. And there's nothing in particular you can kind of pinpoint. They just don't feel like they're a good person to work with for you. You call them and you feel rushed on the phone, or you call them and you feel like you're wasting their time and they're not really responsive to you. But the other one you call and it's $500 difference, and or $1,000 difference, and they're spending time to answer your questions, and they want you to understand exactly why things are different, and it seems like they're kind of looking out for your interests. For me personally, I probably would be willing to pay that difference. So for me, it's not always about the cheapest guy out there. I happen to be in a really weird business where a good real estate agent costs exactly the same as a really crappy real estate agent. Someone who is brand new, doesn't have any experience, they get paid the same amount of money, 3% in a lot of cases of whatever the sale price is of the property, and it's paid for by the seller, as a real estate agent that's got 20 years experience and works with nomads all the time and does 50 transactions a year. I mean, it's really, really crazy. I see your question, Teddy. I'll get to you in a second. It's really, really crazy that, the cost for me is the same as someone who's brand new. It is another way of saying it. And I'm not saying that like as a braggart or anything like that. I'm just saying that it's a really weird model where it's not based on price, right? It's not based on the cost that you're spending. It's paid for by someone else. It's 3% paid by the seller in order to get the buyer to come in with their agent and actually close the deal. So it's a really bizarre thing. But in almost every other industry, we're talking about different pricing. Lenders they're priced differently, and appraisers are priced differently, and things like that. So I think a good amount of time should be spent on selecting a broker that you can work with, a mortgage broker and a lender that you can work with that understands what you're trying to do, especially if they have knowledge of Nomad. I think that's a big plus. Or they can help you and kind of answer your question. So speaking of questions, Teddy says, do you get to hire the appraiser? And the answer is usually no. So usually how appraisals work, at least up here in Northern Colorado, and it may be different in other areas, but you hire the lender in order to do the loan, and then the lender actually uses a third-party service to hire the appraiser, and it's anonymous so that the lender can't influence the appraiser and say, hey, listen, we've done a ton of deals together. I need this one to come in $1,000 higher. The lender wants a third-party kind of like objective evaluation of value. And so a lot of times that you do not hire the appraiser. The appraiser is hired directly from the lender through a third-party service, and you're just paying for it. And so that's how they typically work. I will tell you, I don't know if I mentioned it up here, but there are some lenders, they're very rare, but there are some lenders that they actually eat the cost of the appraisal. It's just included in their fee. And if for some reason you don't get the loan with them, then they charge you for it. But otherwise, if you're getting the loan, it's just coming out of their cost. So to answer your question, Teddy, if not, just let me know, okay? All right, so continuing on. Types of financing. We cover a lot of this in Financing 101 class. You can go, it's either going to be next week, or you can go watch the video if you can't wait. FHA, VA financing. FHA is 3.5%. VA is 0% down. These tends to be the smaller down payments. In a lot of markets, the offer is a little bit weaker. The FHA and VA financing, the appraiser is going to go out there and they're going to actually look for health and safety issues. And if there are health and safety issues, they're going to want the seller to fix those problems before the buyer buys. And so they can be a little bit weaker offers, especially since the FHA, the appraisal deadline, it's just ignored in the contract. They have to give them whatever time they need in order to get the FHA appraiser out there. And the VA appraisals, especially in our local market, they're taking a lot longer than normal to do, and it's kind of first come, first serve. So if you're kind of in a really competitive situation where you're trying to get an offer accepted and there's 10 offers on it, and you have a VA loan on yours and everyone else is doing conventional financing, or some people are doing cash, you have a weaker offer in a lot of ways. But otherwise, they're decent loans. 3.5% FHA. FHA tends to be the loan we go to when somebody has some credit challenges or not the best credit score or a recent bankruptcy or foreclosure or something like that. That tends to be the one that we use most for those is FHA. And then VA, you have to have veteran benefits. You have to have served in the military and have VA benefits in order to get qualified for that. Some closing costs can't be paid by buyer. Appraisal deadline can be extended. We kind of talked about that. Conventional financing, that's the one that we see probably most often. There's some low down, like there's a 1% down conventional loan. There's a 3% down conventional loan. We do a lot of modeling of the 5% down conventional loan. That's what we typically use to model Nomad. Excuse me, but they tend to be larger down payments. So these are the ones that you usually see with 20% down, 25% down. Those are what we see a lot of. But the Nomad model, we're doing usually smaller ones. It is easier to get offers accepted with that type of financing. And then, of course, you can come in and pay all cash. With cash, you can close pretty quickly, really just waiting on your inspection if you're going to get one of those, title work to be done, which is a week or two. And so a lot of times you can close really, really fast with cash. All other things being equal, most of the time sellers would prefer cash. There are definitely some sellers out there that they understand that whether you're getting a loan or you're coming to the table with cash, it's cash to them. And they get that. But I think a lot of people realize that a cash offer, it's not contingent upon the buyer being able to get a loan. And there are definitely some buyers that they go through the process of putting a property under contract, getting it inspected, and then they can't actually qualify and get closed on the loan to bring money to the table. And that's very frustrating for a seller when they've had their property under contract for 30, 45 days, 60 days in some cases, and they actually have to start over because the buyer couldn't actually get their loan last minute. So you got to be careful about that. I'm going to very briefly mention some stuff about unwarrantable condos here. Condos that have poor HOA funding, or the ratio of the number of owner occupants versus the number of rentals in the condo complex itself, can affect the ability for you to be able to get loans on it. And it's not just you getting a loan when you're going to buy, but you have to be aware too that this may affect how many people, how big the pool of people are when you're going to go sell your property. So you don't want to go and buy a property, even if you can get the financing for that particular unwarrantable condo. When you go to sell the property, although if you're doing Nomad, you're probably not selling. You're doing a 40-year plan unless you're doing lease option exit or some variation. But if you're actually moving in yourself and you plan on selling this thing, you got to be aware that you're limiting your buyer pool if they need to have certain types of financing in order to get those on the property. So condos, specifically unwarrantable condos, which could be condos that have poor HOA funding or owner occupant versus rental ratio is off, they could be much harder to finance. For those, you likely need to use portfolio loan. Some credit unions around here do them, or higher down payment. So what can you afford? Moving on here. How much money do you have for down payment? Nothing down. That's the 0% USDA or VA loan. 1% down, or in some cases, there's also down payment assistance. You could do like a FHA loan with down payment assistance and get maybe close to zero. It may not be a full zero. It could be $1,000 or something like that. Nothing down, 1% down, 3% down, 3.5%, which is the FHA, to 5%, and that's usually for Nomad. And then usually that's a 30-year fixed financing, like FHA, VA, and conventional. Or one thing you could do, especially if you're not doing Nomad, but you could do it with Nomad with the right partner. You could go get a money partner and do like a 3, 5, or 7-year ARM with a 30-year amortization, like a portfolio loan from around here. An example of that would be First Bank. 20% down, that's usually 30-year conventional non-owner occupant. So if you're not going to move into the property, the question I get a lot is, why don't we just do 5% down but not move in? That's a fair question. Well, it's because the loan requires that we move in. They're not going to give you 5% down owner finance. They're not going to give you 5% down financing unless it's an owner occupant property that you plan to move into. If you tell them, I'm going to be investing in the property, it's going to be an investment, they're going to tell you, okay, we want 20% down or 25% down, depending on what it is. So a lot of times you can't go and just get 5% down financing on a property. You need to do 20% down unless you're doing the Nomad model, which is why we move in. If we didn't have to do that, we wouldn't. And so, one of the questions that comes up is, so why don't I just tell them I'm going to go move into the property, and then, once I close on it, who cares? They've already gotten a loan. I just won't move into the property. Yeah, that's called loan fraud, and you will go to jail. So don't do that. If you tell them you're getting owner-occupant financing, you need to move into the property. You need to actually do what you say you're going to do. If you don't want to move in, no problem. Put 20% down or 25% down, whatever they require. But if you tell them I'm moving in, I'm going to do owner-occupant, you want to go and move in. So imagine this. So think about this. Someone is willing to come in. Let's say we're talking about $300,000 properties. Someone is willing to come in and give you 10 loans for $285,000 each. Okay? So $2.85 million. They're willing to loan you $2.85 million. This is your partner, your financial partner, called the bank, the mortgage company. And they're willing to loan you $2.85 million if you just come up with the 5% down in order to move into properties over 10 years. Do you want to screw over your partner and not play by their rules and not play fair? They say, listen, as long as you come up 5% down, you move in, I'll give you the money. I'll give you $2.85 million over 10 years. Okay? Or you want to screw them they may say, no, 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 you're going to jail because you're actually not playing by the rules. You're not doing what we agreed on. That's loan fraud, and we're going to come after you. Okay, so just play by the rules. They're willing to partner with you and get that done. So how to get down payment for nomads. We did a whole class on that in the past. The recording is available there, or we're doing a live one on February 28th. You're welcome to come to that one too. So get pre-approved. Tell your lender what your situation is. That's why I think you should have a good lender in your team with what you're doing. Tell them, and then let them tell you what you'd likely qualify for. So they'll say, hey, listen, based on your income, you can qualify for up to 350. Don't necessarily be looking at 350 properties as a nomad unless that is the price point for your market. What I would recommend you do is find out what your max is, and then let's go talk to the real estate agent and start talking about your property selection and be looking at stuff that's not that expensive, but knowing that you have a letter saying you can go up to 350 if it makes sense to do that, and you find the perfect property. Okay, you're still gonna have to prove all of your financial details and everything with supporting documentation, so prepare to do that. Excuse me, you'll get a letter from them saying that you're pre-approved and the amount that you're pre-approved for. And you want this ahead of time because, if you're out looking at properties at 6 o'clock and they're not actually there, maybe they went home or they're at an event with their kids or family or something like that, and you need a letter in order to write an offer that night, better to have one that says, I am approved to 350, even though you're making an offer at 285. And if it was during the day, we'd ask them for an updated letter for 285. We wouldn't ask them for 350. But if you have 350, it'll work in a pinch. So many lenders in our current real estate market actually will fully underwrite or approve your file. They'll send you through underwriting and get you completely approved rather than just saying, okay, you make this much, you say your debts are this much. Based on the numbers you give me, I think you're approved for 350. Here's a pre-qualification letter or pre-approved letter, and I want to kind of just give you the fake number, and I'll verify all that stuff later. It's kind of a really weak letter. Or you can go to full underwriting and know that they've checked all your documents, they've made sure that you actually are qualified for that. So Donna asks, so why 1 year? The reason we do 1 year for Nomad is because at closing, when you get an owner-occupant loan, the lender is going to require that you sign an affidavit saying that you plan to occupy the house for 1 full year. So if they change their form and they say in the future, we want you to sign an affidavit that you're going to be there for 2 years or 6 months or 3 years, then we're going to start teaching either the 3-year, the 2-year, the 6-month Nomad model. Okay. Right now, when you go to get an owner-occupant loan, they tell you 1 year, and so now we are modeling it off of what the rule is. Okay. It's possible they could change that. They haven't changed it in a while, but right now that's why we're doing it. If that makes sense, let me know. If you have any other questions, definitely let me know. I'm happy to answer those. So, okay. We talked about lenders doing that. No surprises after you're under contract unless you do something silly. And by the way, the something silly thing happens all the time. So be super careful while you're under contract not to go buy furniture or a new car or lose your job or change your job or even open up overdraft protection on a checking account. Things like that you need to be super careful of. So don't do stuff silly while you're under contract. Typically, the lender is going to need you to submit the following: a loan application. It's going to detail your assets and liabilities. And so if you have the time, I think you probably should do this in advance. Start looking at, what is it going to look like to fill out a loan application? Maybe even get a blank one and start filling it out so that you have all that stuff ready. And then submit it to the lender in advance. W-2s for 2 years, pay stubs for the last 2 or 3 months, tax returns for 2 years. So get all this stuff ready. Put it in a folder on Dropbox with the most current ones. And when your lender says, okay, I need all this stuff, now you've got it all together in one folder. You can just go ahead and share the contents of that folder with your lender, get it all to them immediately as quickly as possible. All your checking, savings, investment, and retirement account statements for the last 60, 90 days, put all those in that folder too. And then proof of source of down payment funds. So they're going to want to know where that down payment is coming from. So prepare for that. And then anything else they request. And some of the things they're going to request are going to seem really silly to you. Trust me. It's going to be like, why do you need to see my blah, 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 my college transcripts from, 5 years ago? That doesn't make any sense to me. So just prepare yourself mentally. They ask for crazy stuff. If you don't want to provide the crazy stuff, just be prepared that they're not going to loan you the money. So be prepared to give them whatever they ask for. And then I would just stick that in a folder for next time in case they're going to ask you for that again. So be prepared. All right, determine buying criteria. We have a whole class on this, but I'm going to run through it really quick. The type of house, either single family home, multifamily, commercial, etc. Most of the time, we're not doing commercial with Nomad. The overwhelming majority of time, especially for properties 2 and on, And the second property, third property through the 10th property, it's almost all going to be single family homes. There are some exceptions. If you are in a market where it makes sense to be able to buy a duplex, triplex, or fourplex for your first property, or in some really rare cases, your second property, then if that makes sense, then sometimes as a nomad, you can buy a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, and then we're going to convert to single family homes probably for the second one on. In some really rare cases, you might be able to buy 2 multifamily if you got a VA loan, and you can do that. So really rare, unusual circumstances, but primarily for nomad single family homes. Location, we're going to talk a lot about this in this class when we talk about select finding properties. It's the whole class on that, and I think I mentioned it before. Location, neighborhood, town, state, country. We're going to go into a lot of detail about that. The price, I'll give you the short version of my price speech. I think I even have a slide, although it may not be in this presentation. But price, you want to be in the second quartile. So imagine for a minute. Oh, look, you guys can see me. So basically, imagine the price spectrum going from here to here. This is the highest price stuff. This is the lowest price stuff. This is the middle of the price range. We call that the median. And then this is the cheap stuff. The bottom quartile is the cheapest properties out there. That's the 25% of the properties that are the least expensive. They tend to have the most problems. They tend to have a lot of deferred maintenance and things of that nature. The properties that we tend to do as nomads are not the bottom 25%. They are this second 25%, not the cheapest stuff, but below the median and above the cheapest stuff. So the second quartile is where we tend to focus on price for houses. And then size, number of bedrooms and square footage. There's a lot of kind of interesting things about selecting that for rental optimization, which we'll talk about in other classes. We talk about deal analysis. Condition of the property. The nomad model, in my opinion, there's a fix and flip, a fixer-upper nomad model where we're buying properties that need work, and there's a model for that. That is not the normal model. It's not what we talk about. We do plain vanilla nomad. With plain vanilla nomad, in my opinion, we're giving a small preferential treatment toward quality properties over getting good deals. So I'd rather have a good quality property that I'm buying for a fair price than a piece of crap property that I'm getting for an amazing price. And there's some reasons for doing that, but we could definitely talk about that later. But the idea is that you're buying nicer properties, not like really super high-end stuff that's over the median and stuff like that, but the nicer of the properties you can find in that second quartile is the way to think about it. Cash on cash. When we do the deal analysis, there's a whole bunch of classes on deal analysis that we talk about. Cash on cash is the primary measure of how we analyze the properties to make sure that it's going to be a good rental. And you should set what you should be a minimum bar for what is okay for you when you're buying your properties. And it's going to vary from market to market, by the way. It's different in Fort Collins than it is in Loveland. It's probably different in other areas of the country. And so we're going to talk about what that is. The general rule for me is you want to be in that top 5% of the best cash-on-cash return properties, ideally, of the properties you're selecting for Nomad, because they're going to become rentals. And so you want to find the best cash-on-cash properties. But at the same time, sometimes we're willing to trade a little bit of cash-on-cash return for buying something that we're willing to live in. So if our kids need to be in a certain school district, but our cash-on-cash return in that school district is a little bit lower, well, guess what? We're having our kids in the school district. And I understand that. We get it. And so you're trading a little bit of cash flow later on for ideal school now. And that's an okay trade to make, in my opinion. Return on investment, that's just your overall ROI. We'll talk about that when we do deal analysis in a lot of detail. But we should be doing an ongoing discussion with your agent and you or the buyer as we go out and look at properties and we decide what we're doing. So just realize when you're working with your agent, you should be kind of improving this model and saying, okay, this doesn't work for me, here's why, or this does work for me, or I want to get a little bit better here. And you can kind of optimize and change that. So as you see more properties, you'll likely modify it and improve. And this is what I talked about before. Nomad is a balance between investment property and living in it because you're owner occupying these. So ideally, you want properties that are in the top 5% of cash-on-cash return in your area, but you may be willing to trade a little bit of cash-on-cash for things that you'd want living in there. Here's another example. I use this kind of school district as an example of where you'd be willing to accept. Here's a different example when you're dealing with someone who, it's one spouse that is really leading the charge of wanting to do Nomad, and the other spouse is on board, but there's some reluctance, okay? And so maybe, the trade-off is, hey, listen, I can't justify getting a better return on my money by buying a property that has granite countertops and the gas range in the kitchen. But my one spouse really wants granite countertops and a gas stove or range in the kitchen, and so I'm willing to make that trade of not optimizing cash on cash to keep my spouse happy for a house that we're going to be living in for a year. And maybe that's almost like a recurring thing where every house you buy always has granite countertops and a gas range. And so you're willing to make those trades because the model is so good otherwise that it's worthwhile doing. Even if you're getting $50 or $100 a month less in cash flow, you're still going to at the end have $9 million or whatever your number is for your model, for your particular numbers at the end of the model. And so that's why you're willing to make that trade. Okay. All right. Finding properties in the MLS. So we talk about this, finding properties for Nomad. That's on January 31st. That's when that class is going to be taught live. Watch the recording there if you got premium stuff. Then real estate agent, we usually send emails for properties that meet your criteria. You usually look at the listings, and if it meets your criteria, you run your numbers. So you look at it and say, okay, it's got 3 bedrooms. It's in the neighborhood I want. Meets sort of my physical characteristics kind of criteria, and I like the area. It doesn't back to a toxic waste dump or railroad tracks or whatever you want. Then you run your numbers on it. Use Brian's spreadsheet. You can go download a copy of Brian's spreadsheet right from there. And then we've taught a whole bunch of different classes, analyzing deals and intro to cash-on-cash return. That's coming up on February 14th, where you can go watch the video. Analyzing a deal with Brian's spreadsheet, that's coming up on May 2nd, where you can go watch the video. Analyzing deals 201, that's selling with a lease option. That's kind of an advanced strategy. And that's on May 23rd, or you can go watch the video. So all of those classes are coming up. You don't need to go and do Premium Nomad. You can come on just live and do it just to watch them. But you're welcome to do Premium Nomad if you want to kind of watch the videos too. So if the numbers look good after you run them, then you call your real estate agent and say, okay, let's go take a look at this one. I ran my numbers on it. It looks pretty promising. I'd like to see inside. And so then you go out and you take a look at the property. You can also go look at open houses. One thing to remember about open houses, so little known fact if you're not in the industry, but open houses are really, I hate to say this, but they're really a tool for the agent holding the open house to find unrepresented buyers. It's sometimes you actually end up selling a house that's open, but it is taught as a marketing tool for real estate agents to pick up new buyer clients. So just realize if you are going to open houses that you are probably going to be asked for your phone number and email address. And those real estate agents are ideally trying to pick you up as a buyer client. And that may not be a bad thing if you don't have an agent and you're trying to find a really good one. But if you already have an agent, just realize you probably should tell them, I'm already working with XYZ, and maybe have a copy of their card so that they know. And they're less likely, not automatically never going to do it, but they're less likely to chase you and follow up with you aggressively and call you and want to do that when you tell them you're already in a relationship and you're already working exclusively with another agent. So just kind of be aware of that. So at the showing, there's a whole class on this. It's going to be live on March 7th, or you can go watch the previous recording of it. It's at looking at houses, basically what you do when we're out at showings. Look at everything from the eyes of your future tenant. So remember, we're living in this house for a year, but with Nomad, we're going to be converting it to a rental property. So start thinking about, how are my tenants a year from now going to see this property? So look at the flooring, look at the paint, look at the layout, the appliances, the bathrooms, kitchen, size of bedrooms, living areas, storage areas, garage, furnace, water heater, as if you were a tenant. What would they like? What would they not like about it? For the yard, is it a fence yard? A little known fact, about 80% of tenants have pets. So if you're not going to allow pets in your rental, you've just eliminated 80% of the rental market. So a lot of times we are finding properties that are able to have pets. Look at the roof from the ground up. Look at the paint, the siding, the landscaping, the crawl space, the eaves, the gutters. So look at all this stuff, but be thinking, hey, I'm going to be buying a rental. Is this going to be hard to maintain? Is my tenant going to like this property? Are they going to do a lot of damage to it? Is it going to hold up really well? Is it something that the majority of the applicants would be attracted to? How updated is it? Is it a 1970s property? This is actually one of the things we address with Nomad, plain vanilla versus doing lease option, is if you have a plain vanilla model, at the end of the model, even if you bought brand new houses, the houses are now 40 years old. And so you have some updating and things to think about and to do on the property. If you're doing the lease option exit Nomad, where you're buying the properties and you're turning the inventory every 5 years or 10 years or 3 years or whatever the number is for you, then you can be buying newer properties and never really have outdated things that you need to do a new kitchen on or a new bathroom or a new roof or furnace, okay? Or you can significantly limit those things that you need to do. So look at the property and decide, will this require a lot of updates in the future? Is it outdated? Am I just waiting to have to do a kitchen or a bathroom or new roof or furnace or things that are expensive? How's the curb appeal? The first impression for your tenants. Walk a block in either direction, and decide if you're comfortable with that particular neighborhood. I also recommend knocking on the doors of the neighbors and say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about buying this house that's for sale. How's the neighborhood? And meet your neighbors, your future neighbors, in advance, and see if they tell you, oh, I'm so glad you knocked on the door. I didn't think anyone would ever buy that meth house. They had drug dealers living there for 6 months. They just remediated it and it had meth in there. Or, oh yeah, you're buying the house that was haunted. So-and-so died in there, and, they had two groups of tenants in there, and the tenants, they kept moving out because they said that the house was haunted. There was like people coming and knocking on the windows or whatever it was. I mean, who knows, right? So go ahead and knock on the doors and meet your neighbors before you decide to go buy the property. Are most yards kept? Broken down vehicles, people just standing around? How is the neighborhood? Dry it before and after the showing. And then during the showing, write down things that need repairs. For example, Brian shows you kind of how he takes notes. That's not what I particularly do. But then you can estimate the cost later of what you kind of wrote down. I'll also tell you, and Brian mentions it here, you won't remember after you've seen a bunch of houses what needed what. So it's really important that you write it down. You could do this with one house or two houses or three houses. After a while, I only remember the houses I've been in. Brian will say, do you remember the house you looked at? I'm like, no, I have no idea what house you're talking about. So just realize you need to write stuff down in order to remember it there. All right, at the showing continue, discuss the rent range for the property. So when we're in the property, we realize we're going to be converting it to a rental, and the income part of the property is a major factor in how well it's going to perform. So it really helps to have an experienced investor, focused real estate agent who knows the rental market to have this be useful. So we discuss this in detail in the analysis classes where we kind of come up with where we get the rents from and how we calculate rents and how we research it. Then also cash flow explosion, where we talks about ways to increase cash flow on property, and that's on August 15th. That's when the next live version of that class will be, or you can go watch the video right there. So always be aware of who is at the showing. So we go to a lot of properties, and they're tenant occupied, and the tenant wants to be there when we're doing the showing. Sometimes the seller's there, sometimes the seller's agent's there. So realize who is there, and don't say anything to give away your position or your interest in the property. Don't come across and say, I love this property. I need to have it. My mother-in-law lives right next door, and so this would be a perfect property. Because now all of a sudden the seller's like, oh, they really want this. I'm going to stick it to them, and I'm going to negotiate hard. So be super careful about that, especially with the tenants. You don't know what the relationship is with the tenant and the seller. They could say, hey, listen, I'll give you $50 for every showing. I want you to tell me everything they say and kind of what they look at and things like that. You never know. So be super careful about that. And I will also tell you, I used to think I was a little bit paranoid, and I was kind of telling my clients this just to be super careful, but I've since heard of actual situations where this has happened. But it's super easy these days to have like a little camera, remote camera in your house that's not easily seen. You may not even know it's there, or you could leave your iPad or your iPhone or your iPod face down, recording all the audio, and you have it right in the kitchen or right in the bathroom or right in the office. And you basically are recording everything that the buyers and the buyer's agent are saying to each other as they walk through the house. And so the seller, they leave the house for the showing. The buyer comes, they're talking with their agent in the kitchen, and they're saying how much they like the house and what their negotiating strategy is. And, we can go up to 310, but why don't we lowball them and come in at 290? But if they counter back, we'll definitely go ahead and raise the price, and we'll meet them at either 300, 305, or 310. If they throw in the couch, we're definitely willing to do this. The seller had his iPod sitting on the counter and is recording the audio. When he gets home or she gets home, they go and they listen to what you said about the house when you got there. So in my opinion, don't say anything that you wouldn't say if the seller was sitting right in front of you if you're in the house. And I know this is really hard because I know my clients. I mean, they're walking through properties and they're trying to tell me what they like about the house and what they don't like about the house. And, some of them are saying, some questionable, inappropriate things about decorations and, who uses these crazy dolls and, just whatever it is, right? I mean, I don't even know. They just say all sorts of stuff, and they're, making fun of the decorations or whatever. And so basically, if you wouldn't say that in front of the seller directly to them, don't say it in the house. And if you want to have a conversation with your agent, have it outside after the showing, or maybe in the car on the way to the next showing. But, nodding and pointing and kind of just saying, I like this, that's fine. But don't go and get into a lot of detail and strategy and stuff like that. Be super careful. So ask questions to the tenants if they're there. Do you like living here? How long have you been here? How much are you currently paying for rent? Or is there anything you need to repair? Have you had any issues? You're trying to get some information from the tenant in a friendly way. I mean, you're not trying to interrogate them, but ask them some probing questions to see what they think about the property and stuff. So just kind of be aware of that as well. Oh, and then finally, your blink is important. There's a great book by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink, and it's just about your intuition. You go into a property and what do you feel? Does it feel right? Does it feel like this would be a good rental property? And I would definitely trust that intuition. It's more powerful than you know. And this book really kind of goes into a lot of detail about why that's important and that you really should trust that. And I do believe it's true. So just kind of at least be aware of what your intuition is telling you. All the numbers can be right. The house you can't see or say anything is wrong with the property, but it just doesn't feel right. I would trust that and not buy that property. So just kind of be aware. All right, analyzing the property. We have several classes on analyzing. See the finding properties. See the slide on finding properties where we talk about the deal analysis stuff. Nomads, you're going to be living in the property for the year first, but then you're going to be converting it to a rental. So analyze it as a rental before we buy it and move in. Don't just say, I'm going to move in and then I'll figure out what the numbers are going to be. You want to run it as if you were going to convert it to a rental today, realizing you're not going to. You're going to be living in it for a year. But we run it like it's going to be today, and then we know for a year after what it's going to look like and do that. Run rent comps on Craigslist and or ask property management. What kind of tenants will the property attract? So we're going to kind of take into account who we think is going to be in the property. And then do you want to own it? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 30 years? What's your time frame for owning that particular property? Plain vanilla Nomad, it's a really long-term hold. You're owning the properties 40 years. With Nomad with lease option exit or fixer upper, it's much shorter. So realize what your kind of time frame is for holding properties and take that into account when you buy. Will you be happy with this in your portfolio? It's a question I ask clients a lot. Is this something you want to hold in your portfolio long-term? And if they say no, I say, is this something you want to hold in your portfolio short-term? Is this something you want to buy now knowing that you're going to be out of it in 2 or 3 years? And some clients are like, yeah, I'm okay with that, but I don't want to have it in my property, my portfolio, 10 or 15 years from now. It's not a long-term hold for me. And so we talk about that and some of the pros and cons. Plug everything into your analysis spreadsheet. Don't go and just pretend the numbers are good. I think you should run numbers on stuff. Estimate conservative numbers you don't know. Play with numbers you aren't sure about, like the rent, to see what changes. And I think Brian used an example here. If rent looks like it's going to be $1,600 and you like the cash on cash, that's what COC is. You like cash on cash return based on $1,600. What does it look like if you get 14? Are you seeing negative cash flow? And is the negative cash flow okay for you? So definitely look at those numbers and decide. Determine if it meets your desired cash on cash and overall ROI. And then think about the opportunity cost of purchasing it. Are you going to regret not waiting 2 weeks and finding a better property? So think about that too. Decide if you want to make an offer. And then if you do, go ahead and make the offer. Be strong about it. Take action, especially in really hot real estate markets, which is what we're in here in Northern Colorado. You need to act quickly. So even if there is doubt, get the property under contract. Don't lose it to someone else because you hesitated or you don't have everything you needed to have prepared ahead of time done. I mean, you should have like your documents you need for your lender. You should be pre-approved with your lender. You should have everything. You should have reviewed the contract. Have all that stuff done in advance before you're out there looking at stuff. Because you don't want to get and find a property that you love and it's like an amazing deal. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I need to do 90 things in order to write an offer on this property tonight. And it's going to be gone by tomorrow. You want to have all that stuff done. Use the contract itself to handle the risk. Make it so that you can cancel if your worst assumptions come true. If you go out there and the inspection of the property turns up some really funky stuff, you want to be able to get out of it. Waiting a few days or hours in a really hot market like we are in, when you know you're going to make an offer is risky. So in soft markets, you probably can get away with it, right? For a lot of properties, not everyone, but a lot of properties you can kind of wait and see what happens. In our market, you can't do that. It's too hot. So just be prepared to act quickly, especially in ours. There's a whole class we did. We're going to do it again on March 14th on making strong offers that get accepted. We go over what makes an offer strong when you're making an offer there. And then I did another class, which we're going to do on March 21st, which is lowball offer case studies. I'm going to show you at least using some market data around here, and you can kind of extrapolate that to other markets and how to use your people there in other markets to figure it out. But we'll look at how many offers below asking price are getting accepted and how much below asking price and what do some of those properties look like. So we're going to talk about that on March 21st rather. So making an offer, your real estate agent is likely going to need the following. Which property you want to buy, the full legal names as you want it to appear in the deed, what you want to offer, the offer price, how much down payment you're going to use. If you're doing Nomad, tell them 5% down or 1% down or whatever you're doing. the type of financing, FHA or conventional or VA or whatever you're doing. If you're doing seller concessions, that's when the seller contributes to some of your closing costs. The date of closing, if you need 30 days to close or 45 days to close, for most of my clients, I'm calling the lender and saying, hey, how long do you need in order to get this closed? What are you seeing for your appraiser kind of getting back to us, and how much time do you need for that? And then I'm recommending that to the client. And most of the time, unless they have really good reasons not to, they're going to do that. Any contingencies, if you want an inspection contingency or a financing contingency or an appraisal, then you'd actually include those. And how long you want to give the seller to respond. Lender pre-approval letter or a regular approval letter, you can do that. Anything else that you think belongs in the contract or is pertinent. So if you want to add additional provisions about something, we can add that in there. Then your real estate agent is going to write it up. They should review it with you, and then you should sign it to submit it. And then after it's signed, it's going to be sent to the seller's agent. The agent represents the seller, and they're going to present it to the seller. And that's typically how it works. So how to strengthen your offer. Useful in some hot markets like we're in right now, but likely different in normal or soft real estate markets. Number one is you can offer more money. Your real estate agent can call, and in fact, I think they should do this regardless, but your real estate agent can call the other agent and ask them, what is the seller looking for? What would be an ideal offer for the seller? And let's see how many of those things we can match up. How many things can we make perfect for the seller so that we can get a good chance of getting the offer accepted, especially if it doesn't matter to us. It doesn't matter to us if we close on a Monday or a Friday, but it makes a huge difference to the seller of the property. Great, let's do what's going to be best for the seller. We don't care. So, do they want a fast close? Do they want to rent it back? Is it all about price for them? Is it about timing? What is that? And then we try to accommodate those things for them. In some cases, especially with my more sophisticated investor buyers, we're waiving the inspection. Excuse me. For most people, I would not recommend that. You can still have one in some cases, depending on how you word it, but you can't cancel based on the results. You can waive the appraisal. For most nomads, I would not recommend we do that, but for some of my sophisticated investors where they feel really, really comfortable in the value and they know they're not going to object on it, they'll make up the difference if it doesn't appraise, we can waive the appraisal. Basically it says here, if the appraisal is below purchase price, you can't cancel. That's one of the ways to write it. There's other ways to write it too. You can try to renegotiate, but probably pay the difference at closing or lose your earnest money. You can waive the loan objection. So if you can't get the loan, you have enough money in cash in order to buy the property. Had some clients do that where they knew they can get a loan, and if they didn't, they had the cash to buy the property. So you can kind of do that, or you could lose your earnest money if you can't actually buy the property with cash. And so most of the time, I'm not recommending clients, especially nomads, do that either. Higher earnest money typically doesn't add a lot of incentive to the seller in our market, especially in a hot market, and they know that the contract we have here in Colorado is extremely buyer friendly. It is not seller friendly at all, but it might in other markets. It might actually have an impact in other markets. I could see that happening. A dispute with earnest money. So if you actually put up earnest money and you end up in a dispute with the seller where they think that you acted not in good faith and they're concerned about stuff and they decide to fight you for the earnest money, that could literally tie up that earnest money while you have a dispute and work it out either in court or amongst attorneys until it gets resolved. So be super careful about that. It could be delayed for months in some cases. So be careful about playing fair and treating seller with respect and doing what you're supposed to do, honoring your agreements in the contract and understanding what those agreements are by talking to your real estate agent. So when the offer is accepted, congratulations. Now we need to get to work. We start by sending the fully executed contract to your lender. How am I doing on time? 7:30? Good. All right, start by sending fully executed contract to your lender, and we usually do that for you. Your local market, actually, I should point out, we do that as real estate agents working for our clients. However, there may be other agents that do not do that, so be careful that you may need to do that as the buyer, especially if you're working with an agent that doesn't do that for you. Your local market may be different, but I'll share what typically happens in northern Colorado. Connect with real estate agents and other nomads to find out how it's different in your marketplace. We're going to go over a whole class on March 28th on contract to close from when you go under contract on a property to when you close on the property itself. And there's other classes that I have that cover very specific parts. Like we did a class on negotiating inspection objections and seller property disclosures and things like that. And so there's other classes too on that. You can go watch those. All right, so let's talk about the inspection. This is the class we did on inspections. You can go watch that one, or we're doing another live one on April 11th. Schedule the inspection before the deadline. It's important to get this thing done. The inspector is going to go out there and he's going to inspect all the major systems if they're accessible and actually create a report for you. In my opinion, this is like someone who is really experienced looking at a ton of houses, giving you a tour of your new house. So show up for the inspection, follow them around, ask questions, point out things, and say, hey, listen, is this normal? How do I maintain this? Is that a good kind of thing to have? Is that a bad thing? How does that work? And so it's your opportunity to get someone to give you a guided tour. Your real estate agent is not qualified to do that unless they happen to be an inspector, okay? But most real estate agents, they are not qualified to do that. It's a different skill set to be able to inspect the property and really comment on that. And the inspector is qualified and has insurance for it as well. So be at the inspection and walk around with the inspector and get information. Ask lots of questions. They're giving you a tour of your house. It's almost like you're about to buy something. They're going to give you the walking tour. That's all you're getting. The seller's not going to come over and show you how to work stuff. It's the inspector that does that. And they'll point out things that don't seem right if needed, and you got to kind of decide whether or not you're going to, with the help of your real estate agent, a lot of times, things that need to be fixed or things that just need maintenance on them, and realize there is a difference between those two, okay? You could test for radon, mold, asbestos, meth, lead paint, sewer line, septic system. So this is your chance to do all those tests. A lot of times there are going to be extra fees for doing a lot of those tests as well. So just realize that too. Then usually you get your report emailed to you within a day or two. Then if you have an objection based on what you found during the inspection, you can go ahead and talk to your real estate agent about doing that. But it's typically for major things that you didn't see during the showing. It is not typically for nitpicky stuff. So, that you didn't like the color of the cabinets, you're not objecting to that. You saw it when you saw the property. And if you came in the property and you saw that the door wasn't painted well and it was chipping and stuff like that, you're going to be really hard to get that to go through on an inspection objection. They're going to say, you walked through the front door when you saw the property the first time. You should have made an offer with a price that included knowing that the condition of the door was in. This is for stuff like you go see the property and there's snow on the roof, so you couldn't see that the roof was bad. And you're going to have an inspector go up there during your inspection and ideally look at the roof when there's not snow on it. So that's what that sort of stuff is for, okay? You can ask for whatever you want, but it's going to be hard to get a seller to go along, especially in hot markets when they have 3 other people behind you with offers that are waiting to buy it too. Seller can accept, counter, or do nothing. We talk about this in the class on the negotiating inspections in a lot of detail. If they do nothing, contract is technically canceled in Northern Colorado. You can withdraw the objection to avoid this. Inspection resolution is signed if needed. And so that's basically how that works. There's some other deadlines. For example, title deadline, we kind of go over that. Review this carefully, call an attorney if needed. Your real estate agent is not qualified to comment on title insurance. So they can basically send it over to you. There's certain things that I personally check for, just kind of more administrative. Does the name appear correctly? Does the price appear correctly? Is the address match? Things like that. But as far as what it actually says in the title policy itself, you really do need to have a title attorney comment on that and give you an interpretation, because it's a legal type matter. And your most real estate agents are not qualified to do it. So just realize that. This title usually shows the chain of title and all conditions for issuing title policy. If anything changes, you'll get a new copy and you'll review it at that time. You'll also have the ability to review HOA docs. And then the seller's property disclosure. This is the document where the seller discloses to you the condition of the property, what they know is wrong with the property, what they think is working and functioning. And we did a whole class on this, seller property disclosure case studies. It'll be the next live one will be on April 4th, or you can watch the video. All right, this protects the seller and gives you information about the property. It is helpful to have that before the inspection, because you want to know what the seller is telling you was wrong with the property or has been wrong in the past, and what's right and what's working. That way your inspector can go and look at stuff. If the seller says, hey, listen, we had a leak in the basement, now you can have your inspector go and look for the leak or evidence of the leak or what happened and how they fixed it, and see if there's going to be any potential problems. Better to kind of clue in the inspector before you, just to have him randomly run across it. I pointed out to him. All right, final walkthrough. So basically you're under contract. You've kind of gone through all your deadlines. Now you're getting about ready to close. We're going to walk through the property one more time before we show up to closing. So right before closing, with typically the hour before, at least for me, your real estate agent may do it differently. Make sure condition is as agreed upon in the contract. So if they were supposed to do things for you as part of the inspection, make sure all that stuff's done. Are all the appliances that you agreed to buy there, are they the same appliances you agreed to buy? Are the blinds, any like ceiling fans or kind of lighting fixtures, things like that? All that stuff is at present as agreed to in the contract. Is there anything broken or damaged that wasn't before? And so you're basically going through that, doing the final walkthrough and doing that there. Finally, at closing, we have a whole class on closing real estate deals. I did that. That's coming up on April 18th. There's also a recording. Transfer utilities effective upon a closing date. The day of closing belongs to the buyer in Colorado. And so if you're buying the property, should have the utility switched to your name for the day of closing. That you are responsible for that day. That is something that you own just by, I think, law or by just general practice. So realize that the closing day belongs to the buyer. Start your insurance coverage effective on the date of closing. You can't close without that in place. Your lender is going to require it in almost all cases. I can't think of an exception. What to bring with closing, and this varies a little bit by title company, but money in the form of a cashier's check or wire, I'm strongly recommending you do cashier's check unless you can't. So most of the time, bring a cashier's check. There's a really big wire fraud going around. Actually, I probably should warn people about this. So hackers are hacking into real estate agents' email accounts, and they're just sitting in wait. They're not doing anything with the account until the real estate agent has an upcoming closing. And then what they're doing is they're sending an email to the buyer, and it looks like it's from the real estate agent, but it's from the hacker who's hacked into their email account. And they're telling the buyer, hey, Mr. Buyer, closing is coming up on Monday. Please wire the money to this account. And they send them the hacker's bank account, their wiring instructions in order to go to, I don't know, Cayman Islands or something like that. And so the hacker is hacking into the email address of the agent, sitting in wait until the agent has a closing coming up, and then they're contacting the buyer and saying, wire the money to this account. Once the buyer wires the money to that account, the money is gone. They can't get it back. You can't pull back a wire, and the buyer voluntarily did it. It wasn't like it was stolen from them. It was just they were tricked into sending it voluntarily to this hacker's account. So if you're working with me, you will never, ever, ever receive wiring instructions from me. I will never email you where to wire money. I'm telling you up front, everybody knows. I will always tell you to bring a cashier's check. If you need to wire the money to a title company, you should contact the title company directly, not from the telephone number in an email from me, because the hackers could say, oh yeah, call me at this number and I'll go ahead and send you the wiring instructions from there. This is the number for the title company, and then they basically set up the telephone number fraud, then they can do that. So I will never send you the email address or the telephone number of the title company. You should go look it up independently and call them and verify if you're going to wire money. I think you should just bring a cashier's check. You'll have the check in hand when you show up at closing. You're going to give it to the title rep, and the title rep's going to take it from you, and that's done. There's no fraud there. But there's definitely a chance for fraud if you do it that way. So don't do wires, in my opinion, and you will never receive a wire instruction from me. So don't expect one. And if you do receive one, it's fraudulent. Don't send any money. Okay, so I kind of went on my little rant about wire instructions. Hope that was helpful. You'll need a picture ID and one other form of ID. Anyone else who needs to sign, I'm not sure what that is, actually. I guess Brian's saying, bring your other partner or lender or buyer or whoever. I don't know. I'm not sure why he has it in there. But yeah, I guess you do need to, if someone else needs a sign on there, bring them with you. Seller may be there. You can request separate closings if needed. Yeah, if there was kind of a tenuous negotiation and you guys are not friendly, the seller and the buyer, you can usually request two separate closings and have one close on one and another one. You sign the documents. Read and ask any questions as much as you need. Usually, title company person is going to answer most of those questions. Note, deed of trust, closing disclosure are the most important documents that you'll probably sign there. And then the seller signs a deed, typically a warranty deed, although there are exceptions to that, that transfers ownership from them to you at closing. And after closing, deed gets filed electronically with the county. You get a copy via email or mail a few weeks later. They're moving a lot more toward email, so you'll probably just receive an email copy of the deed itself. You'll get a copy of the owner's title policy, which is the title insurance policy that you bought at closing. It's usually within 60 days. If not, call the title company because they are the company that issued it to you. You're buying insurance from them. That's what you're doing. File all documents in your filing system. I think I covered that in another class in a lot of detail. The longer you wait, the more daunting this becomes. That's a note from Brian. And it's so true. I mean, you just get home from closing, you're kind of used to all the stuff. You kind of know sort of what to expect in there. Do it right away. And I realize, especially if you're moving into a property, all this stuff is happening at the same time. But take some time to do that. It's easier to do the paperwork right away. Then later on, when you're like all confused, and you're like, I don't even know where that is anymore. Go change the locks and reset the garage door openers. You don't know who has keys. So I would always change locks, and don't forget to reset the garage door openers, because they may have given you 2 garage door openers, but their cars may still be programmed for that particular garage door. And so they could just pull up in their car, hit the button on their car and open your garage door, and then they could go in the house. Not saying that most sellers would do that, but it's a possibility. So I would actually reset the garage door openers and change it on the actual opener itself. And if you need help with that, probably Home Depot can help you with it. So you never know as keys or as codes program. Yep, that's what Brian says. So get the property rent ready. Primarily, if you're not moving in as Nomad, so if you're buying an extra property and doing lease option, you'd be getting the property ready to kind of do all that, do all necessary work and maintenance, furnace and AC serviced, smoke and CO detectors, fixing the items from the inspection report, any other needed repairs, do all that, have the unit cleaned, have the carpet cleaned. And then if you're going to move in as a Nomad, I think you should take photos of the property in its brand new, super clean condition without any of your stuff in there, because 10 months from now, when you start advertising the property for rent, it's going to be easier for you to show photos online when you're advertising on sites like Craigslist. I would go get all those photos done. I just noticed there's a comment here from Jamie, Dropbox for the win. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, for organizing documents. That must have been what it was on there. And then photos for when you put up for rent, make sure you get those photos and have it all done. It's easier to do it when it's vacant, and it looks a lot better, and you don't have your stuff in there. There's an exception to this. I've got a couple clients who, they are amazing home decorators, and their houses look like showroom ready. And so in those rare cases, I think it actually would sell better and easier if you took photos after they've moved in. But the overwhelming majority of us don't live in like a showroom. Okay. And so it's probably better for you to take photos of the property vacant, and that way you can use those photos over and over again when you go to rent the property and have it done. And a lot of my clients now are hiring a professional photographer in order to have those photos done professionally instead of taking them themselves. It makes a difference. We did a class on marketing for tenants, and I showed you the difference between the professional and amateur photos. And the professional photos were a lot better, significantly better. So I think it's worth paying the $100 or so to have a professional photographer go out and do photos. And then rent to an amazing tenant, typically after a year with Nomads. Review the tenant screening, lease, and property management classes. There are quite a few. They're all on the website there, or they are coming up live too, so you just wait for those. Advertise as early as possible. If you're not moving in, maybe get permission from seller to market it before closing. Most cases, you're not going to be able to do that. Take the calls, pre-screen, do showings, and take applications. We're going to go into this in a ton of detail in the tenant screening class if you haven't seen those already. Thoroughly screen tenants, sign the lease, manage the property, and perform ongoing maintenance. And then kind of wrapping up here, exit strategies on the property. If you guys have any questions, feel free to start putting them in. Exit strategies, hopefully you started with the end in mind. What is your preferred exit strategy and timeline for the property? If you're doing plain vanilla Nomad, most of you are going to be holding these properties until they're free and clear. And then you've got huge equity and huge cash flow on the properties, and you're just kind of sitting on them. So that could be your exit strategy. I'm just going to rent them out forever and let my kids inherit them. Some of you are going to decide to do lease option exit and turn your inventory so you don't have any dated properties or very large CapEx expenses. It's a little bit more work, a little bit more of an active model, but you can definitely do that too. So if that doesn't work on the market, or the market doesn't cooperate, if your plan is to do something and that doesn't quite work, what then? What's your kind of option then? And I think having a backup plan that says, okay, my plan is to do plain vanilla Nomad, but I'll do lease option exit. And if I can't do lease option exit, then I can always just for sale by owner it or do something else and figure out a way to kind of do that. But think about the plans for doing that. Jamie also asked a question, can you get the images that the seller used to list the property? So not usually legally. I mean, they're definitely available. You can go pull them off of a number of websites, but technically they're owned by the seller, or the seller's agent, or both of them. And so you're not usually supposed to use them, and they usually do have a watermark on them that has the name, at least in our local market, that has the name of the MLS on it. And so it's really hard to use those particular images for the seller that used to sell the property. One of the things you probably could do if you wanted to, especially in softer markets. In our really hot market, we're not usually trying to rock the boat too much. But in the softer market, you could say to the seller, hey, I would also like, your pictures look amazing. I would also like permission to own the rights to the photos when I buy the property that you're selling. And I'd like permission for me to be able to use them. And I'm sure you could do that. And Most sellers, I don't think, would have a problem with that if it didn't show a lot of their stuff because they're posting them online anyway. So you could go do that, but in most cases, we're not. All right, some possibilities for exit strategy: sell it using a real estate agent, sell it yourself for sale by owner, do the lease option exit, owner finance it to someone, or hold it forever and pass it on to your heirs and make it their problem. So those are kind of Brian's ideas for that. And I think this is the last slide. Things successful investors do: they take action. They're definitely action-oriented. The why is important in helping you motivate yourself to do this, and that hustle. You got to be moving stuff. I mean, you got to be taking action and moving and doing things. You can't be working in slow motion. It's perhaps the most important thing once you take action is that hustle of like being active and doing things and getting things done. Make decisions and follow through. Learning to make them quickly matters too. You can't just kind of sit down and analyze a property for 4 days. The time to practice deal analysis is way ahead of time. That's why we do classes on it all the time. Treat this as a business, not a hobby. We're all here to make money and add values to others, right? All right, so that is the end of the presentation. I'm here to take any questions and answers. If we still have people online, looks like we still got, I don't know, 16 or so people. So any final questions or anything like that, I'm here to answer those for you. Do you guys like the class? Is the webinar format working for you? Let me know what you thought. You can either use the chat thing or you can use the Q&A. I think I might turn off. Can everyone, when you guys are on here, can you see what the other people are writing in chat? Is it like open to everyone to see those? Jamie enjoyed the format. Thank you. I wonder if other people can see the chat window. You can select. Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah, everyone can see the chat. So that's pretty interesting. So if I left the chat open, I wonder if I could block somebody. Hey, Ty, I love you, buddy. I'm going to block you just to see if I can block somebody. Is that cool? Maybe I can't. No. Yeah, Timothy says, woo. Yeah. Glad you liked it. I don't think I can block you. That's good. I've done a lot of these, so good job. Oh, you're welcome, Tina. Glad you liked it. Alicia says, I love the webinar format, being able to attend class remotely. It's huge for us to live farther away and have crunch schedule. Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, glad we can help. Teddy says, great job. Well presented. Thank you. So the panelists only goes to you. Oh, so people can actually say whether they're texting just the panelist or to everybody. I wonder, though, if I can block Ty. Yeah, I don't think I can. Let me see if I can do it somewhere else, Ty. And Ty, I'm not doing it to pick on you. I love you, buddy. You know that, right? Yeah, I don't think I can block him. So I guess my concern is you get one bad apple on here who goes a little bit crazy. You know, if we're in a live class, I feel like I can handle that. If we're on here and someone's distracting me while I'm trying to present, and I don't really have the ability to do that, so I don't know. I'll have to think about what I want to do with that. That's good, though. Elijah, you're welcome. Raj says you appreciate time to share your knowledge and time with us. You're very welcome. Kick them. Yeah, I don't know how to kick them yet, though. That's the challenge there, Andrew. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know how to kick somebody yet. So maybe I'll have to go read the instructions. This is all new to me. So cool, guys. Any questions on that webinar? I mean, it's kind of a long one, and it's almost like it's a webinar that's trying to teach everything all at once. And you know, my model is more go into a lot of detail on one topic so that you really, really understand it and make it a great reference. So if you're about to go under contract, you know how to analyze deals or do the inspection or whatever it is. So Lynn says, awesome, James. Learn more this time around. Some new material. Yeah, I can see the other chats. I can see 5 people have written something. Yeah, so that's very cool. Ty says, man, this is awesome. I got it on Apple TV. Oh, you're allowed to watch it on Apple TV. That's kind of cool. Becky says, thank you. This is very interesting. I'm new to this model. Oh, very cool, Becky. Where'd you hear about the model? Did you kind of hear about the class on Meetup or something? Yeah, this is kind of cool. I definitely like a lot of parts of this, and it will definitely allow us to put the new Nomad clubs into other markets and also serve those folks as well. And then, of course, all the local people. I love you guys, and we'll definitely hear that too. Yeah. KL. Hey, I heard about it on Meetup. I'm not sure I follow Becky. It sounds like you may have heard about it on Meetup. And Elijah says, enjoy this forum, but also looking forward to face-to-face meeting tomorrow when network is possible. I totally agree. You need both. You need the content, but you also need to network with those other local investors and, kind of being able to learn about what's working in those markets and stuff. And Elijah, you're here locally, so you'll be able to do all that too. But yeah, especially in other markets, I want to be able to give the great content for free to everybody nationwide. But then I also want them to be able to find good lenders and real estate agents and hard money lenders and whoever else they need in those markets to be able to do it. So, I actually, sometimes I forget that I'm on camera. You guys can see me, right? You can see like a little corner of me in the thing, because it doesn't show that way for me. Yeah, so Ty says, yeah. So I got to be careful, right? I'm not like, I don't know, picking my nose or, doing something inappropriate or something like that. So no, I can't see you, Alicia. I can't see you at all. So I got to be super careful on here that I'll do something funny. Because I don't know, I have a tendency. I think I'm just talking on the phone or something, and I definitely have to get dressed up for these things. Meaning that I can't be in like underwear and t-shirt. Oh, so you guys can see my Yoda cup. There you go. And I got my Yoda socks that I'm wearing tomorrow. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that. That's awesome. All right, cool. Well, let's look at these. Say, yep, you're in the upper right corner. Okay, awesome. Alicia says, I like your vision is genius and so excited for future webinars. That's awesome. So, it can be moved around and expanded, so you can make me bigger if you wanted to. That's pretty cool. So unless you guys have questions, I'll kind of end up the webinar. And thanks again for coming on and for sharing with this. And I'm going to, when I get off here, I'll start seeing how I can process the recording and get the recording up. And that'll be on learntobierich.com/meetup. And I'll have the recording posted for basically whenever I get it done, either tomorrow morning or tonight, for all day tomorrow and then all day Thursday. And then starting on Friday, that page will actually change to be talking about next week. So that's the kind of intent with it. And then we'll just kind of keep rolling these out each week. In case you missed the live one on Tuesday night, you'll at least be able to watch the recording on Wednesday or Thursday. So it's only going to be up live for 2 days. Of course, if you need access to the other videos, then you can do the premium Nomad thing. And the premium Nomad thing, I think, is like $99 for the year or something crazy. At least that's what it is for now. So cool, guys. If you guys need anything, definitely let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off and see if I can do the recording. And for the local people, I'll see you all tomorrow night. For people in other markets, if there's a meeting on Thursday, we're going to do it that way. So you guys are all welcome. Thanks, Ty. And yeah, if anyone needs me, let me know. But thanks again, everyone, for coming on. I will talk to you all soon. I'm going to close it out now. Bye-bye for now. Have a good night.